Catus Maximus here, this time with a review of a half-inch, I guess. I wouldn't call it mid-length. I would say it's a little bit longer. I just reviewed a Pennon's half-inch ratchet, and so I would call this a longer handle, comfort grip, gray plastic. So this is the special Intrepid, if I can, God, hard to see that. Intrepid Fallen Heroes Fund, which is actually, I did a little research, it's a respectable veterans support charity, and apparently they claim, more than 90% of the donations actually go to helping veterans, and Napa, and has held donation drives, and that was what this was actually a special edition set of ratchets. They actually sold for a pretty decent price. I think it was around, I don't know if it was 2013 or maybe it was a little later, like 2017, when they had these, and they're part of a 3/8 and half-inch set. I just got this half-inch version, and they're a pretty good price. Fine tooth, 90 tooth, springless, or screwless, so it just uses a regular retainer clip. Do like that they have a repair kit RK12 printed right on the ratchet. This will be a 90 tooth floating pawl ratchet. Seems to work pretty well, although it sounds like it's really dry. Anvil play. It's more than I would really like on a nice half-inch pairhead floating pawl ratchet, but I suppose it's acceptable. And it does have a reasonably low level of back drag. As we can see on this anvil here, this ratchet has, I don't think it's ever even had a socket inserted onto it. What I mean is it's super easy. If we put on this socket, we'll put a socket on and off a mere 3 times. Actually, that's a pretty hard coating. Oh, you can see just a little bit of a witness mark there. So still, just putting a socket on and off a few times leaves some witness marks. Sure, this is high quality, and I'm sure this is a half-inch ratchet that would, or haven't tested it, but Carlyle's have pretty good reputation, except for the fact that I thought it was cheesy for a special Veterans Fund edition, special edition Veterans Fund ratchet. That, as you can see, they didn't align the Carlyle with the flat of the head, so I thought that's a little bit cheesy. And I assumed maybe the handle had slipped or something, but this ratchet's never been used, so no reason for the handle to slip on a ratchet that's never had a socket on it. And obviously this thing's been kicking around for a while because the handle actually has quite a few dings. Anyway, thought it was a cool ratchet because it is instead of the yellow and blue, it is a black and gray Carlyle. And very few people have that version. Oh, I was going to mention that the ball detent, it's pretty good, but it could be stronger. It actually feels, it's just a little bit weak for a nice half-inch ratchet, comparing to one of, easy to find contemporary peer that'll have a store at least reasonably close to a Napa, would be the Icon. Of course, it has a much stronger, not super strong, but it is a stronger ratchet or detent. The Icons do have a tighter anvil, but they do have this, which compared to the Carlyle, I like this flat reverse lever. It has a little bit of a rise to it, so it's pretty easy to activate, but it sits completely flush against the body of the ratchet inside a little recessed area, so it barely sticks above the head of the ratchet. Also like this because if you drop it and it ends up lying, actually it has a comfort grip handle, so it'll prevent it from really impacting, but in situations where the switch does get directly impacted, it's less likely to break. The Icon uses a cast zinc switch, and we can see it's the little levers floating off the ratchet body, and in really abusive situations where heavy tools and wrenches are being thrown on top of your ratchet in the bottom of the toolbox. I've seen a lot of ratchets, and I've seen ones like this where it has broken off, and so that is one thing. The second thing is this does stick out quite a bit further, or quite a bit higher than the Carlyle, and there's an argument to be said about the Carlyle just using a spring clip to hold the assembly together versus using screws, because you're not dealing with screws that can come loose or get stripped out, which is an advantage. Another thing here, we get these both flash, and I measured they're just about the same height. And what we can see here is that the icon actually has a little bit longer of an anvil. Anvil slightly shorter on the Carlyle, but has a slightly taller head. So I'm not sure if this Carlyle really is going to be any stronger. If we compare to the side, we can see it's a little bit narrower. So even though the head itself seems taller, the overall height is actually shorter because it has a more compact switch, and the head is slightly narrower. But if we look, we can see that it has a pretty thick ratchet body there, pretty evenly ground. But the icon does have a very thick ratchet body, and the YouTube tests on these show that the anvils just sheer. And as far as overall length, that seems, whatever this is, 12 inches, just seems to be the standard length now for comfort grip ratchets. So as far as the gross comparisons, oh, and I should say that the icons do have quite a bit of back drag. There is no question about that. I haven't mentioned it enough in my previous videos, but the icons have a lot of back drag. This Carlyle is actually, it has a fair amount of back drag. It's more than that Pennons I just reviewed, but it's still pretty low. It's much lower than the icon. I thought this clip was going to be getting hard to get out of there, but all I had to do is drive the, you can see the little witness mark, if I can get the right angle, the little shiny witness mark. Come on, fingers. Just had to grab the pick and just push it under it, and man, that clip just popped right out of there, almost concerningly easily. Anyway, bottom plate is actually pretty thick, and then they have this recess that they've stamped in there, and ooh, it's even ½ inch. It's the bottom plate for the ½ inch. So I approve of what Napa's doing here. Is you have a clip, and so if you have a bunch of parts for Carlyle ratchets all mixed together, you'll be able to see the small, medium, and large clips, or quarters, 3/8, and ½ inch ratchets. The plates will be the same thing, but at least they also have ½ inch stamped on them. And I approve of this too. Not only we know it's a 90 tooth, it's the pawl for the ½ inch ratchet. So this one, I mean, I'll have to be just say this, bone dry, 100% bone dry. Come on, Napa, add at least a little drop of oil. And if I'm looking down in there, what am I seeing? I'm seeing what looks like a little bit of rust, so it means the switch is actually steel on this, where it is cast zinc or cast aluminum on the icon. I think this Carlyle is a little better than the icon. That pawl, though, is huge. Let's see if I can get this apart without it exploding in my face. Good. Yeah. The only thing I can say is when it comes to fine tooth ratchets, you just don't have a lot of cross-sectional area. That Pennons video I just made has very deep, coarse teeth. These teeth, you know, just don't have a lot of material to get rid of it, even, but they try to make up for it by being extra wide and making the metal super hard. Nonetheless, these fine, all else being equal, the finer tooth ratchets are going to wear out faster just because there just isn't as much depth. But they try to make up for that with this. This pawl here, here's my thumb. It's actually pretty darn wide. I mean, this thing probably has, whatever that is, 12, 15 teeth on it. Pretty wide engagement on the wheel. A little curvature where it pinches in the ratchet body, so you ratchet, and then when you turn, it jams up and just tries to basically crush the pawl between the body and the anvil. That's how these little ratchets work. But at least it is a huge pawl. I don't think it's going to be slipping until it's essentially getting worn out. Fascinating little design choice in here. So one of the challenges with these kind of reverse levers is, of course, you have that pin sticking out in the center to push against the pawl, but what prevents that lever from falling out? Many times they put in extra wide pawls, and it's just, or excuse me, extra wide pins, and it's just this pin here pressing on the inside edge of the ratchet to keep it together. But on this one, I was like trying to figure it out, and I don't have enough hands. I don't have an overhead light. Hopefully the switch doesn't fall out. But look at that. It has this weird piece of metal with a little spike on it that goes just down into, oh, it just fell into the, there we go. Right, just in a little slot down there. And that's what's retaining the switch. And I thought that's an interesting way of doing it. So when you have this little piece in there, it provides really nice retention for the switch, but there's nothing interfering with this pin here so that the pawl can operate freely. And that may be just one small design change that allows it to be essentially the same as the icon, but to not have as strong a spring and so thus less back drag. But I've actually never seen any ratchet that ever had something like this where it had that piece of sheet metal, that little spiked shim, as a retention mechanism for the reverse lever. And I've taken apart a lot of ratchets. That's kind of cool. The one disappointment, you know, even like, you know, gear wrenches and the OEM tools slash the old 36 tooth Duralast, Milwaukee's, I mean, all have rubber seals. Napa should have included a little groove in there and had a little O-ring, at least around the anvil, and maybe one around the switch. That would have been nice just to help reduce the amount of grit that's getting in there. Other than that, gave it some lube so it sounds a little better, and we will, that is a pretty tight fitting little plate. And the little clip just pops back in. Doesn't make that horrible rattling anymore, so just a little bit of lube to quiet that down. So the biggest criticism of this really is the fact that anvil, I mean, it's okay. It's tight enough, but I mean, I suppose it's okay. I won't complain compared to that pennons I just worked on, which the anvil was all over the place. What I will criticize, should have had just a bit stronger of a ball D10. Holds normal sockets just fine, but if you have like a big 1/2 inch deep well and a long extension, probably gonna end up falling off. Other than that, it uses kind of a unique design choice to hold in this switch, which I do approve of. The switch is actually steel, and pretty much all the other aspects. I mean, Napa did do a good job on these Carlyle ratchets. Their dimensions are good. Overall, the design is good. Have an absolutely massive pawl in there. Pretty easy to find repair kits. They even, once again, tell you what kit you need right on the bottom plate. And pretty darn low back drag. I mean, the handle barely shifts when you are rolling the socket. And it's even better if you're not actually, you know, having tension pushing sideways on it. Other than that, pretty cool ratchet. Don't know how I talked about it so much. I'm just kind of enamored on how they handled the switch retention mechanism, because there's just no other ratchet I've seen that does anything quite like that. Doesn't mean it's the best or anything. I just think it's a neat design, and overall, I think these Carlyle ratchets are cool. And I think it's even cooler to get one that has a unique black and gray handle. Anyway, thanks for watching.